The 90s was an insane time to be a fan of video games. I wasn't alive for that time period, but looking back through a lot of the games released, and as well as looking through a lot of my dad's old Game Informers, it was a time of constant innovation, evolution, and icons being made every moment. Though many of those stars of the past were vibrant back then, some may have faded into obscurity. Earthworm Jim, Raziel, and Croc are a few examples of this. But if there was one character that was absolutely the embodiment of his time, it would be Gex. Don't take this as a bad thing. In fact, art being made of its time is inherently a good thing. Sure, some things will definitely not age well in our current era, but it's also a way for those artists in the past to leave behind a moment of themselves. In a sense, it's like archaeology or anthropology. Just instead of studying ancient Mesopotamians, we're just seeing how similar yet different we were only a few decades ago. I personally have always liked Gex, ever since I played his games as a kid. Now again, I was not alive for the time period at all. I am what many people of the internet refer to as Gen Z. However, these were games I came across as a kid and found fascinating, like I was diving deep into an era my parents grew up in. And honestly, there's a lot of merit to that. But after the release of the new Gex collection a few months back, I've been craving to take a deep dive back into this series. Just one more time, to see if my childhood expeditions of time traveling through my PlayStation controller were as good as I remember them being, or if they were a static-induced haze that hid my eyes from a worn-out concept. So come along with me as I talk about the Gex Trilogy. Before I get started, I should say that I actually hadn't played Gex 1 before making this video. Well, if I had played it in the past, I don't think I remembered it at all. I don't remember it being a part of my childhood gaming collection, but then again, I was donated so many games from other people that it could have easily been lost in my brother and I's vast collection. This particular Gex game has a strange history. It wasn't even a PlayStation game at first. No, it was a game for the Panasonic 3DO? Yeah, the 3DO, that expensive console that was released in the 90s. It was originally sold for $700, which in today's money would make it $1,613.25? Jesus Christ, guys, were you trying to bankrupt all the poor kids? But look, despite that insane price tag, it did have games developed for it, and one of them was, in fact, Gex. The game was developed by Crystal Dynamics, who are actually responsible for a lot of beloved and iconic video game series, Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, the later Tomb Raider games after the original few, and obviously Gex. In a weird way, Gex was the unofficial mascot for the 3DO, until he wasn't because that was a sinking ship and they needed to get off that pretty much immediately. So what was the development behind Gex like? Well, it was created by Lyle Hall, his idea being that he wanted to use the technology behind the 3DO, mainly the audio tech, to make a side-scroller game with, and I quote, the coolest character I could come up with. Yeah, I guess Gex is cool. I kinda see him more as charming though, if not a slightly annoying person. But his heart's in the right place. Cool, I don't know about that, but he's not a bad guy. The most iconic part of the Gex character is his voice, which would be provided by Dana Gould, a stand-up comic who actually worked in The Simpsons for a time, though that was from 2001 to 2007. He did Gex before The Simpsons? Huh, you'd think it'd be the other way around. But he didn't just do the voice, but he also wrote a lot of the character's dialogue. Although, it is just primarily references to TV, film, and celebrity, so I guess it wouldn't have been too difficult to write. Apparently, the development behind the game was actually a bit of a hassle. Work had started to get a bit hard, and 2 entire world themes had just been completely cut, specifically the sci-fi and western ones they had planned, which would actually appear later in the game. The game would get more and more delayed since it was the first time any of the crew had worked with 32-bit graphics and any of the software involved in making these higher spec games at the time. They would add on more and more features over time, but they eventually would have to push their milestones back more and more. This whole story paints Gex oddly as a sort of passion project, but also one that struggled to be released. Though how does this reflect in the game itself? Well, let's just get on to that. Gex is a bit of a strange beast. I guess I'll lay out my overall feelings of it first, and you'll get what I mean as I go on. I would say this game suffers a lot from first game syndrome in more than one way. It really feels like this was the team's first 2D platformer ever. There's a lot of interesting ideas here, but they clearly needed more time to flesh them out, or just find out what worked altogether. I'd compare it to, say, Sonic 1 or Mega Man Classic 1. Both of these games can be a bit rough around the edges because they're trying a lot of new things, and while that can be celebrated, you can also see why someone would jump straight into Sonic 2 or Mega Man 2. You're really only going to play those games to experience the evolution of the series, and that's pretty much how I feel about Gex 1, but to a much stronger degree. I guess I'll talk about the positives first. I think the visuals of the game hold up pretty well. I don't know what it is, but it feels like Gex is this 3D model that's been digitized into a sprite, while everything else has more traditionally drawn sprites. There's just something different how Gex himself is designed and detailed in comparison to all the enemies. But I think that's a good thing. It shows the contrast between Gex, a character from the quote-unquote real world, and the enemies inside the TV. It also helps Gex stand out as immediately distinctive within his own game. Gex also has a good design. They could have just made him a neon green gecko, but they added these little details of soft purple onto his eyes and these diamond shapes along his back. The core theme and concept of Gex is also a strong hook. I mean, the idea of each world or level being a different TV channel or any sort of TV show is one that is super creative. Though I do think this game does suffer a bit from only really having 4 core themes to each separate area, but their choices aren't bad. I just think more variety between the levels would be nice. This was the 90s after all, the time of cable being at its biggest and maybe even most absurd. The audio design is also nice, the sound effects sound punchy and good. Gex has a lot of one-liners, but he'll repeat a lot of them constantly. I had to hear let's get back to the mystery van far too many times. The music is fine, it's not bad, it just sort of blends into the background. Not in the way where it adds to the atmosphere and creates a very memorable feeling like say Jak and Daxter or Oblivion do, but it more so just doesn't stick out too much. It stays on theme, but it doesn't really have any moments that made me perk my ears. And that's all the positives I gotta say, honestly. Look, I don't want to be too harsh, but I just did not care for this game. Now, I want to make it clear, I did play this on the Gex collection on Steam. If there's any major differences in the version that I played compared to the original, I don't know. Let me know though if there is. But overall, I just kinda hated playing this game after a bit. The first world isn't too bad, some straightforward level design, nothing too insane or anything like that. The controls could be a bit more fine-tuned, but overall, it's not the worst thing in the world. Though having circle be attack and square for the tongue just feels off to me. But maybe that's just because I'm so used to the later games and really many other games usually having square as attack. The game switches up a lot by the time you hit the second main hub world, Toon World. This is where a lot of my problems start to kind of rear their heads. For one, a lot of these levels are very maze-like. Now, that inherently isn't an issue on its own. The main problem comes in when you realize they want you to collect 1 or more items per level. Basically, each level you're required to collect a remote to unlock the next one, sometimes more than one. On paper, that isn't a bad thing at all. Except that, like I said earlier, a lot of these levels are designed like mazes, and it doesn't help that usually the remotes are placed in areas out of the way from the exit. Usually, just to make everyone's life easier, 2D platformers will make necessary collectibles on the same path as the exit, or just at the exit itself. The only times you're expected to go away from the main path is for bonus collectibles. Like, for example, the Chaos Emeralds and all the classic Sonic games. Those are out of the way from the main path, but reward you eventually with Supersonic and bonus endings. This is not how it works in Gex at all. It is imperative you get stuck in a level for a bit just to find one singular remote. Later levels make this even worse. It's almost impossible to tell where you're going at times. It just gets too frustrating and it's not helped by the strange controls. It feels like you can never tell exactly how much height and distance you get with your jumps. And at first, that doesn't really feel too bad, but later on with how these levels get designed, it feels like a roll of the dice with how far and how high you'll go, and it makes it just hell to do any sort of precise jumps. I was using the rewind tool a lot for these jumps, and it genuinely felt like just pure randomness. Maybe there's something I'm missing, but I just learned that over time, the jumping barely feels like it works in these later levels. The wall crawling mechanic is nice though. Being allowed to practically crawl on the walls and even the background is a nice touch. It can be a bit slippery, but I guess I can let that slide because I can't really name any other 2D platformer that does something like this. I wish it helped a lot more with the exploration of levels, but what are you gonna do? There's also a few boss fights and they're all pretty forgettable, but this dragon boss fight here is a joke. You just keep jumping up these tiny platforms, you don't even get to fight it. It's genuinely pretty whack. Rez is a cool boss fight, but there's this bit at the end where his orb floats away and maybe there could have been a bit more clarity on what was I supposed to do. I died a few times trying to lick up the little orb he turns into, but I don't know, maybe that's on me. I could just be dumb. So yeah, I didn't really like my experience with Gex 1 overall. It's not the worst game I've ever played, but I don't think I have any reasons to go back and play it. Hopefully the next game will be a vast improvement. Gex Enter the Gecko, or Gex 2 for short, was a big part of my game collection as a kid. I believe I've told the story in a video before, but one day I found this game as well as Crash 3 and Spyro 3 and some PS1 demo discs in someone's trash one day. Look, my family was super poor, what are you gonna do about it? These games were a massive part of my childhood, and helped me spark an interest in retro gaming pretty young. I tried to look up some development info for Gex too, and this was pretty much the best I could find. I quote directly from the Wikipedia article itself. In early 1997, Crystal Dynamics announced that they were working on a 3D sequel to Gex in the style of Super Mario 64. They originally intended to debut the sequel with the technology available at the time. Lead programmer Adrian Longland recalled, "It actually started as a 2D game, and after 3 months we had a prototype with Gex jumping around and using this hover mechanic. Then E3 came along, and suddenly it was, okay, Crash Bandicoot shows you could do 3D graphics on the PlayStation, and Mario 64 had this open world. Let's just put those two together for Gex." I mean, on paper, it does make sense to look at it that way, combining elements of Crash Bandicoot and Mario 64, the two biggest 3D platformers at the time. Mind you, this was before Spyro the Dragon and Banjo-Kazooie. It was the strange period that was kind of the in-between of 3D platformers between the trendsetters of Crash and Mario, and the later games that would improve on the genre like Spyro, Banjo, Sonic Adventure, and many others. Let's see though if this game holds up to its predecessors, and maybe even to those after it. Well, now that I've replayed the game, the Crash meets Mario level design and structure does sort of make sense. Each level is actually pretty well designed, being pretty wide and open rooms connected through linear sections. Basically, it's combining elements of the explorative nature of Mario 64, but with the segmented obstacle course-like nature of Crashes 1 through 3. Honestly, it does make the game feel pretty memorable. There's also a big hub world, and while I do like the abstractness of this hub, it's nothing too special. There's no major reason to explore, in contrast to some of the best hub worlds in gaming, such as Peach's Castle. Instead, you just walk through these ancient temple-looking sections with large TVs that teleport you into different levels. And in these levels is where you'll get used to the controls, and they're not the most precise controls in the world, but they aren't bad either. I think it could be a bit fun to mess around and see what you can get away with, but nothing that touches some of the best movement from other games. You finally have attack set to square, thank god, and tongue on circle, which is more or less better since it's easier to hit square to attack. There's now also a sort of double jump. Well, it's more of a floor bounce after a jump. Is this the first double jump in gaming? Probably not, but it is super unique. You have to time it pretty well to chain it together, and it's actually pretty satisfying to pull off a pretty long jump chain. Climbing is now a lot more restricted, only set to certain areas with texturing, but I don't hate that. Instead, it allows you to do climbing in segments that feel more like special obstacle courses than having it just be something you could do whenever. It comes up frequently enough throughout the levels to make it feel like an important part of your platforming arsenal. There's also the karate kick, which also works as an attack and a long jump. Once you commit, you have to stick to it. It's not anything that's too bad, it's a decent long jump. It wasn't a hindrance, but a bit more control would be nice. Sometimes it feels weird to use, like it refuses to come out. I don't fully know why, but it was not enough of a problem to make the game worse. And that's really all you got in your moveset. It's a very small set of moves. No wall jumps, no slides, no dives. Just a simple set of moves, really. Really, the biggest aspect of the game is down to the levels and themes themselves. There's 6 level themes overall. Cartoon, horror, cyberpunk, kung fu, space, and dinosaur, or I guess you could also refer to them as caveman levels. These themes are repeated at least twice throughout the game, yet for some reason the horror theme is repeated 3 times, 4 if you actually count the bonus stages. I'm gonna be real, I don't mind the theme, but I kinda got tired of seeing it. You'll also get the occasional costume in some levels, and I love when they do this. I wish they did it more, but I also understand that probably would take time from development. You also get some more unique themes in these smaller bonus levels, but only a few. Really, most of the levels are fine, again, taking a lot of influence from Mario 64. You start with the screen to choose what task you want, and from there you can more or less pursue whichever task you chose. That's because now you get remotes at the exit of the level. There's 3 remotes per level, with 1 hidden remote and an extra remote for collecting all the collectibles. The collectibles are different each stage, yet they do this great idea where you have a quota to reach for each set of collectibles. When you reach that quota, it basically switches its shape and form to the next set and then changes again for a third set, making collecting these smaller things and collectibles more interesting because you're excited to see what each one will change into. Each remote usually will give you a different task like survive this obstacle course, smash objects throughout the stage, and other stuff. Though occasionally you'll also get remotes that need some exploration throughout the stage to find secrets, which is nice. They're not immediately foreshadowed to you, but I can imagine you find it easily just by stopping around and thinking for a moment. Honestly, most of the levels are good, with the only levels I really didn't care for being the space and the first cyberpunk level. I'll be real, it was such a letdown because I love cyberpunk and space sci-fi, but if I'm being real, these gimmicks were just annoying. The cyberpunk one was just a chore to constantly get the glowing power up and to run over to different spots. These areas with the super jump genuinely didn't work at times. It felt like I was getting stuck on some sort of invisible geometry, but maybe that's a bug in the collection version? I don't know. The space levels are just frustrating for having a lot of bottomless pits combined with the air gimmick. Having to wait every few seconds between platforming is just sort of lame. Also, I'm already wearing a helmet. And look, like I said earlier, Gex controls aren't super precise, so sometimes I would just fall off. Now, I do think this is an issue with the camera as well, which is probably the worst aspect of the game. It was an early 3D game, but there were a few times the camera killed me by obscuring what was in front of me. That, and it also plays this obnoxious sound if it gets stuck on something. On the collection, it's a bit easier to control due to it now being properly mapped to a right control stick, but it's just still wonky. The best level, though, is the penultimate level before fighting Rez. This level is so good. One that really utilizes all of Gex's abilities to their fullest. It actually made me realize Gex's moveset, while simple, could actually feel great with some tighter level design, which this level shows off. But I guess it's only fair for the final level to provide an actually good challenge. I had a lot of fun with this one. Oh, and just one more thing I should add here. The music is insane. Like, sure, not every track is super memorable, but there were so many incredible songs in this game. Just listen to the menu theme. It starts with this moodier atmosphere, and then it transitions into a groovier, more upbeat sound. It's so good, and I think it has a super unique progression. Or the theme from Samurai Night Fever, being this funky hip-hop beat with some Asian instrumentation. Kinda sounds like if the RZA and Just Blaze worked on a track together. Or the theme for the police bonus stage, which sounds oddly like the theme for Cops, but hey, that song is a bop. But yeah, genuinely, it's a really good soundtrack. Unironically, a pretty overlooked soundtrack from the time, I'm not gonna lie. There's also boss fights, and they're pretty much all pushovers. But the Godzilla-themed boss fight was actually pretty cool. The rest fight is actually good though. A decent challenge that actually had me retrying quite a bit. Once you get his pattern, it ain't too bad. And that's Gex Enter the Gecko. A giant leap forward for the Gex series. Much like the other two series I compared it to earlier, I think it's a pretty solid blueprint for the next games to follow. And by that I mean the only game to follow, but shut up, I'm getting there. This is the final game in the Gex trilogy. Which is odd. You'd think at the time with a decent following, they'd want to make more games. But I can also respect that they left it at these 3 games alone. One, because it makes talking about them a lot easier, and 2, it leaves them to have a small contained legacy. Not to be eventually oversaturated by far too many spin-offs and sequels and etc. Not saying all series are made worse by making more games and spin-offs, but it can also damage a brand if they don't have the ability to expand like some other series naturally can. There wasn't much developmental history I could find of this game, but there were a few things. One, they wanted to focus on making more over-the-top animations and more or less stronger characterization. They also wanted to make players more invested in getting every single collectible, and thus made a few adjustments in their development and design to make that happen. And finally, they seemed to focus on really trying to push the PS1 to its limits, making bigger levels, fixing the camera, and doing a lot of environment mapping. So it really seems like they wanted to double down on what made Gex 2 good and make what didn't work better. Though Gex 2 was solid overall, I do think there was much you could have done to make the best Gex game you can. So, was this the game that Gex would need to be the best, or was it a disappointment? Let's find out. I think the first thing anyone would probably immediately catch on to with this game is that there's a real woman here. Yeah, she's just flatly green screened onto, well, the screen. I'll be honest, it kind of feels weird and a little immersion breaking. I know I said that I liked the differences in style back in Gex 1, but there was a sense of cohesion there. Like, it was intentionally trying to make Gex look out of place. Agent Extra? Well, maybe it's also because she isn't really characterized throughout the story, but I just think she sticks out too much like a sore thumb. And no, I'm not gonna do the whole, "Why is there sex and woman in my Gex game?" But I will admit, a lot of the sex gags between the two characters, Gex and Extra, kinda just became flat. I mean, if you're gonna make flirty sex jokes, at least make them clever. Like, pull some influence from the Naked Gun movies for your sex jokes, you know? Where the jokes are clever and absurd all at once. Instead, all their jokes are pretty much Gex saying, "I want sex," and Extra going, "Maybe. Stay focused though." Now, I think her actress Marlise Andrade is a beautiful woman, but I think she didn't get a lot of time to get comfortable with the green screening process, or she just didn't have a solid director. Yes, I did in fact find her attractive, I'm pretty sure that's the point of her character, but I feel like for her type of character there should be a bit more of that darker, steamier sexiness, you know what I mean? I should be getting that sensation of a Bond girl or Black Cat from Spider-Man. Instead, I feel like she's far too uncomfortable, like a woman who's being stared at by a Redditor and the Redditor is drooling. I don't know. I don't actually hate this idea, but I feel like it could have been done better. It just feels uncomfortable all around, and I really feel like she's kind of uncomfortable here too, but I don't know, I could be assuming things. Though I should say that I'm surprised that this was even in a kid's game. But the late 90s and early 2000s era have shown that quite a few adult themes were sprinkled into a lot of kids' media. I actually don't think that's inherently a bad thing, just as long as it isn't straight up, dornography, obviously. Though I also find that she has to appear and give a flatly delivered pun after every time you start a level is quite annoying. It's only after you get your first remote per level, but still, I had to experience this so many times. And again, the joke is the same ending every time, just with a little bit of different writing. There's no rule of threes where it's different on the third time, it's always the same punchline just with a different sentence structure. It's like Carlos Mencia with dementia. Oh, I think I'm starting to sound like Gex actually. Now, how's the gameplay? It's better, it's pretty much the same stuff from Gex 2, but given just a few tweaks to be better and flow a lot more. The camera obviously feels better, and it actually feels easier to do the tail bounce as well. Really, the new major feature, or I guess refocused on feature, is the power-ups. I barely forgot to mention them in Gex 2 because they weren't really anything special outside of visual changes and invincibility, but here you have a few power-ups that shoot projectiles and actually do some different effects. These, for the most part, are fine. The projectile abilities are a bit inaccurate, but it's not too bad because it usually doesn't ask much of you, but I'll come back to that later. The hub world is drastically improved. The hub in Gex 2 had a nice visual style, but not much personality. Here they took a lot of notes from their peers and went, we need to insert this game's hub world with like 10,000% more personality. And they did. This may be one of my favorite hubs in any platformer. Sure, you start off in Gex's secret base, but you quickly see how each level now has a little room for itself. Theming goes a long way in any platformer. They're a genre not really known for providing you with a traditional story structure, thus theming, aesthetic choices, and personality drives a lot as to tell us why a platformer sells and why it's remembered. Now that I think about it, that's one thing that's shared between fighting games and platformers. But genuinely, the aesthetics and themes you present in your levels are what make a good platformer stand out. That's a large reason as to why LEGO Star Wars The Complete Saga is such a good game. Theming goes a long way. Anyways, the levels in Gex 3 are much better than Gex 2. They definitely lean to do a quality over quantity style of design, and I think that makes it better overall. Respectfully, I think a good 5-hour game will be better than any 10-hour game with a lot of padding. Gex is a prime example of this, but now with less levels, no themes repeat and make each level stand out greater from each other. Now each theme feels special because you only really get to see it once. And while I do miss some of the themes from Gex 2, like the Kung Fu levels, I can't say there aren't any good ones here. The Christmas special level, the anime level, and the Egypt levels are really good. I especially do love the Egypt level because it's really well designed, having well designated paths and objectives, but they also lean to the aesthetic really well, and I appreciate the Doctor Who and Stargate references. At least I think they are. Okay, I don't know if these actually are, but I feel like they are. Also, I should have mentioned this earlier, Gex has a new costume every level now. This is pretty much perfect for the game, and to be honest, just makes sense for the whole TV theme they got going on. Back on track though, there's really only 2 levels in the whole game I'd consider bad, and I mean pretty bad. The Gangster TV level is just atrocious. For one, it's the smallest level in the game, or at least it seems that way, just mostly having a cramped design placing way too many enemies that either tank your hits, land one on you anyway, or placing these Tommy gun enemies that hit you for a ton of health and will just hide from you if you get too close. You can learn how to hit them and juke them, but it's just so annoying because how they're placed in this teeny tiny hallway level. And for some reason, they expect you to aim accurately with this fire projectile to break locks just to enter the next part, which, like I said earlier, the aiming is not precise at all. So now I gotta wrestle the terrible aiming controls, hit the lock, and pray I don't get blasted by the Tommy gun enemies. It's just really frustrating to deal with and doesn't really feel like there's any good response. But the worst level in this game, if not the whole Gex series, is the Greek mythology level. This level sucks, man. For one, they really want you to use this Hercules power-up. So for I swear 80% of the level, you're hearing this infuriating ticking in your ear all the time. But whoever designed this level to be in the middle of the game was evil. For one, there's so many sections where you need to make precise jumps while a flying enemy is attacking you. Flying enemies in the Gex series can be annoying, but they're usually placed away from platforming sections because they understand that Gex can't exactly deal with them. So then why are we placing flying enemies around collapsing floating platforms? Oh, and this level is so unclear with what you need to do to progress. I had to watch a walkthrough just to comprehend what I was supposed to do at some points, and it genuinely frustrated me. There was no way for me to even know I was supposed to jump into the area I had already left to move a pillar there just to get back to where I was earlier to progress. I am not against adding in puzzles that take time to solve, but this is awful. A puzzle should provide you with everything you need to know before entering it. A good puzzle makes you have an aha moment when you figure it out. It shouldn't make me say, how was I supposed to even know that? But look, that's just 2 bad level designs out of a good 13 if we're not counting bonus levels. Speaking of which, one level I forgot to mention is the pirate level, which I think stands toe-to-toe with the other good levels I mentioned. It's one of the better levels with a lot of good aesthetic, platforming, and even adds in some fun mini-games of firing cannons. It doesn't expect some crazy bounce jumps out of you, but instead is a cleverly designed obstacle course just for you to explore. The anime level, while simple, I can appreciate, partly because this was the 90s, and usually anime back then, and in the 2000s as well, was heavily looked down upon. So I'm glad they put this in, probably to show the kids that, hey, the adults knew that we liked it, and to some extent, that it's okay to like it. I don't care for the, well, upskirting Japanese high schoolers bit, but whatever, this game is oddly sexual in general, and I guess I just have to deal with that. I don't really care for it, I think it's done poorly, but it's there, okay? Much like the last 2 games, there's bosses in this one, and they're absolutely pushovers. In fact, I think there's only 3 in the whole game, which is less than Gex 2's 4 bosses, and even less than Gex 1's 5 bosses. I do like that there is a wrestling-themed boss who is a mix of The Rock and Steve Austin, which is kind of funny. If only he didn't get beaten like 3 milliseconds. There's also this Wizard of Oz boss, and he's somehow even easier despite being the second boss in the game. And then there's the final boss, Rez, who is luckily a decent challenge. Though they gave Rez this bit crush scream and it kept making me laugh whenever he'd do it. I'm actually trying not to laugh thinking about it right now. I swear, Analog Horror and Adult Swim have either ruined or enhanced my sense of humor. But yeah, that's Gex 3, and in my opinion, it's easily the best Gex game. The best level design, the best hub world. The only thing Gex 2 has better is really the soundtrack. Seriously, Gex 2's soundtrack is really good for almost no reason. There's just one last cutscene we need to watch here and
then, after he showed me his entire collection of Star Trek bloopers, he asked me to marry him. Actually, he insisted.
That's my dad. Good thing I got you out of there when I did. Now, back to you and me.
Are you there, sir?
Alfred, not now.
There seems to be an emergency, sir. The world needs your
Alfred,
help.
I can't hear you. The signal seems to be breaking up. Gex, I'll call you later. Bye. As I was saying, Extra, my love, it's tail time.
huh? What's going on here?
Come here, you silly Gecko.
Does Gex? Does
Oh,
Gex
Gex.
have sex?
It's tail time!
I feel it coming on. Oh, this is not gonna end well for you.
It's tail time!
Gex canonically has sex with the real woman. Hell yes, he's the best. I guess we all love Gex. I guess we all love Gex. Oh yes, Gex canonically has sex with the real woman. Hell yes, he's the best. I guess we all love Gex. Got some cake that I could borrow. Mario, so slow to plow your favorite hoe. Whoa, wait, don't get mad till I tell you about the gecko who gets laid in his pad. He's the king of the 90s, tail time super likely. Got these other OCs on IVs, no IP is likely to own the generation. Gex the king of the nation, and for the children. Tell me, Sonic, would you be here if Sega never paid in? If they never paid in? Gex canonically has sex with the real woman. Oh hell yes, he's the best. Gex loves sex. Yeah, I guess he does, alright. All I'm saying, man, is Gex had laid more than Rayman. What's new? It's a simple plan in the TV land. These other dudes don't even have a clue what you gonna Scooby-Doo. Cause Gex had sex, there's nothing to prove. That one card was the last thing to lose. Now with the Trilogy, he's the epitome. And to me, that's the 90s encapsulated all into one G. Gex canonically had sex with the real woman. Oh hell yes, he's the best. I guess that we all love Gex. Gex, 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 Gex. We love Gex. Sorry, whew. I don't know what came over me there. It's like a spirit possessed me or something. But yeah, Gex 3 is the strongest game of the series, presenting us with a great hub world, solid levels, and its overall full exploration of just what the Gex series could truly be. And all this comes down to one fundamental question. What was it about Gex that allowed it to stand out? What makes it special today, despite the fact its shelf life didn't last as long as many of its peers? Well, I genuinely think Gex is carried by its premise and presentation. That's not to say these games didn't add anything of value at all. In fact, its unique ideas and fresh concept is what allows it to be remembered today. The very idea of traveling through TV is a fun idea for a platformer, and honestly, I think it could still work today. Instead, you could have Gex traveling through a streaming service. I don't know, maybe Rez is trying to turn Gex into the mascot for a series like Gexflix or something. There you go, Gex 4 already solved. But anyway, this unique idea was super creative. Sure, a lot of its presentation was of its time, and a lot of the jokes don't really land today, especially in Gex 3, but you could say that for many other games of the time as well. I don't believe simplifying things down to didn't age well is not a good way to handle a critique, because everything is made for the time it was made in. Nobody's ever going to truly future-proof their art, because you can't. Unless you're like a time traveler or something, but that's neither here nor there. To me, what makes Gex special is that it is sort of a time capsule to an era I never existed in. Yet this game and other media from the time allow people like me to understand to some extent what the culture was like, and Gex is a really good example of this. It's an example that you don't always need the most precise controls, the best technology, really any of that. You just need to present people with a fun idea. And I doubt we'll find anything quite like Gex ever again. But to be honest, I'm okay with that, because Gex itself is unique enough to stand on its own. And yeah, that's all I really got to talk about today. I know people are probably expecting, I don't know, a PS2 platformer trilogy, maybe Sly or some other PS2 game out of me since I've been covering a lot of those lately. But instead, I thought I'd mix it up and go for a series that actually is a bit of a soft spot in my heart, or at least 2 of the games are. But yeah, what did you think about my Gex video? Was it dumb? Was it smart? Do you hate it? Do you love it? Let me know in the comments below. And with all that being said, I'll see you next time.